This is a recording of the Kansas City Secular AA speaker meeting held every Saturday night at 7 o'clock p.m. at HJ's Youth and Community Center, 6425 Warnell Road, Kansas City, Missouri. This is episode 19, and our speaker is Ryan C.
Very idyllic childhood. I grew up in South Kansas City, but I went to elementary school and middle school right here in Brookside, just north of here. So me and my friends, I had a really tight group of friends. We were kind of like, I'd say the Goonies or something. They're like the Stranger Things kids, like 4 or 5 boys who, like, we ran around outside. We just like hiked through Waldo, through Brookside, through the Crossroads. You know, we just walked everywhere, and it was kind of a really magical time in my life, in that kind of like late adolescence before we were introduced to these older things. At 10 years old, people were smoking pot around me, and I knew enough to, the like older siblings and stuff, and I knew enough to reject it. I knew I wasn't ready for it at the time, but it was kind of normalized that people were doing drugs, even if it's lower stakes drugs. But around the age of 13, we tried drinking for the first time. Got into a friend's liquor cabinet, and it was just kind of, children drinking is just kind of being real hyper and silly. But it was, kind of dipping your toe in the water in a fairly safe environment. But it was only the third time that I drank that I got in like major trouble for doing so. And it's pretty clear to me that from that experience that I had kind of an allergy to alcohol right from the very beginning. Like, I was never going to have a normal life drinking. But a friend's parents were out of town, and on the weekend, it was a Saturday, we during the summer, it might have just been during the summer, but got drunk during the afternoon. I poured gin into a half full 2 liter of Mountain Dew and shook it up. And we walked to Loose Park, and at least when I was younger, there was always people smoking weed in Loose Park. So that somebody offered us weed, and I had never had the experience at that point of mixing the two or anything. And I was already way too drunk already, and ended up waking up back at my parents' house after a blackout. But I guess apparently I walked to another friend's house and knocked on their door looking for the friend, and they weren't there, but there was a mom's dinner party going on or something. And yeah, so I was first time being on the floor drunk. I peed my pants, and then it was bad. Yeah. So it was the summer between freshman and sophomore year of high school. I was I guess grounded all summer, first very early time drinking. But it's kind of this running theme in my drinking experience that I tried to be socializing. I tried to do it to be a part of the group, but it would end up getting out of hand, and I'd end up spending a lot of time alone. And later on in my drinking career, that was just kind of self-induced, because I felt like I couldn't go out in public, or I would rather drink alone. That's the kind of drinking I wanted to do, I guess. But high school in general was a lot of excessive drinking. I did even simple things, I did theater after school. I was a theater tech person. But there was an hour between school and theater rehearsals where all the theater tech guys, we'd go find a place to smoke a bunch of weed, and you'd just come back and sit in the dark and be stoned at school. So it was kind of fairly harmless fun, but it kind of just got me used to as soon as most of your responsibilities are done for the day, you you get fucked up and you hang out and as soon as like the school bell lets out, get fucked up right away. What became like a 5-day-a-week habit, I guess. Sometimes more if we had weekend rehearsals and stuff. And, I never even bought marijuana until I was like in my 20s, but, I was a pretty heavy and regular weed smoker already in high school. And then, my friends, like that group of friends that I used to run amok with while I was grounded, they made friends with like some jock guys who like had fake IDs and looked a lot older. And so I would go to parties where, people were drinking heavily, and I would get a taste of that, but I never really, did it habitually until I turned 21. But it was a regular part of my life. I just assumed, getting really fucked up, like drinking way too much was just something everybody did. I didn't see it as being a major issue yet. But looking back, there were several instances like the one where I got in trouble the third time I ever drank, where it had obviously become like a big issue before I even graduated from high school. So I went to college. I stayed in Kansas City. I went to an art school, and I had a lot of big ideas about, it doesn't matter where you go to high school or college, you can work hard and be a great artist just by doing a lot of work and becoming really good at it through practice. And I did that, but I also was very sloppy because I was so screwed up all the time. And I think just having the absence of parental authority, but all these like unearned kind of freedoms of adulthood, living in dorms, living in apartments, but, I hadn't earned it through like paying my own way or jobs or anything. I didn't have the responsibility there to take it as seriously as you needed to. So I kind of remained in this like suspended adolescence. There was just, again, like constant pot smoking in college. My first night there was like a freshman Friday party, and I socialized, I was really still like kind of a social butterfly. I was like very outgoing and made friends really easily, but I also like became the drunkest freshman. I won the award, for that was like something they were like a tradition, I guess, like a lame college tradition. But like, I was hobnobbing with the most seniors and stuff, and they were giving me like pot brownies and drinks, and I, got the most messed up, I guess. So, but, I met a lot of people, and I, it felt like, college is going to be this successful, great thing, but it wasn't. It was a huge disaster. And by the last 2 years of college, I really wish I had taken time off. I really went through it just to graduate. But, my sophomore year, turning 21 and living in houses with people, with other roommates, and everybody drinking all the time, but I could go back to my room and keep drinking and drink excessively. It became an issue where this severe depression that I had from a very young age started to creep in and take over, and I started to isolate a lot more and not be able to deal with interpersonal emotional issues, to the point where my entire senior year of college, I was like one long extended kind of mental breakdown. So it, and I almost wish I hadn't gone to college at all. Just that kind of idea that you can make art and just work hard at it. I think I would have personally gotten a lot more out of just getting a job and like learning the basic life skills of paying rent and, learning to afford things, I guess, but afford a life as an adult. But so my senior year of college, I was in a relationship where I was very emotional all the time, and we were both pretty like emotionally immature, but it kind of dissolved and my senior year, and I finished school and was like starting to treat my depression for the first time, but hadn't realized that how much the alcohol and the substance abuse was fueling that depression, because I was still in this lifestyle and culture where everybody kind of drank a lot. I just was not aware of how my drinking was more excessive and more problematic because of how it affected me emotionally, how I did it alone, how I wasn't doing it socially, how it made me withdrawn. So, right after I graduated, like 2 weeks, I did attempt suicide, which I took too much Zoloft, and it was very traumatic. It was a very serious event. It was just kind of the culmination of this mental breakdown, like I talked about, and finishing college. That was just my only goal in life, was like, I have to actually finish and graduate. And I did it technically, but I didn't see any future for myself, I guess. So I, it's very scary for my family, very scary for me. I got out of they always send you to a mental institution, I guess, or I went to research psychiatric. And once I got out of that, I was kind of high on life a little bit and like wanting to get back in there, but I hadn't treated the emotional issues or the drinking problem yet. So I moved into a house with some friends from school, some relative, like people I knew from school, basically. And it ended up being kind of a party house, and I kind of fell on my face again. I was drinking heavily right away. I was trying to drown out whatever I was feeling by being social. I was being extra social and drinking around other people, but I was still having a lot of the same bad habits, and it got worse and worse. And I think my parents started to realize this isn't just depression. This is a drinking problem. So I moved out of that house back into my parents' house, and eventually ended up in Valley Hope in Atchison, Kansas for the first time, going to rehab and treating the alcoholism and not just the depression. And it was a very eye-opening experience. It was something that needed to happen, but I think I was so caught up in, how much of a mess my life had been for years at that point. It seemed like that, I wasn't, it was such a major problem to deal with. I wasn't ready to sort out all the wires, sort out, the tangled mess, I guess. So I did see the good things about being sober, but I don't know the exact timeline, but I ended up back in Valley Hope, the one in Missouri. I forget which city it's in. A year and a half later, 2 years later, I want to say, but trying to get jobs, trying to figure my life out, and still, not being fully committed to sobriety. And after that, I moved into an Oxford house this time, and did pretty well, and I was more determined to get back on the horse of sobriety. But I think a lot of the problem was, the major depression kind of made me, feel like I really screwed my life up. It's already too late. I want to drown my sorrows in alcohol rather than like put one foot in front of the other and progress it in my life in any way. So, the temptation was still there, and the compulsion to drink rather than do anything productive in my life. And part of the problem was I didn't know how. I didn't know how to be like a successful person, and I didn't have the toolkit, I guess, to go out into the real world and I met one of my childhood friends. I was working at Hy-Vee, and he was working there as well, and ended up like buying weed from him. And I moved out of the Oxford house back into my parents' house, but I was smoking weed regularly, and it just weed has been like a consistent like way of me relapsing, and then eventually I drink again because the weed doesn't feel like I am as emotional, but it kind of makes me lazy and put off my responsibilities. But my mental health throughout this was like really degrading. I was spending more and more time alone. I was isolated from friends and any kind of social group, being several years out of college. And I found myself, very depressed again. And I attempted suicide, a kind of a weaker attempt, but I did attempt suicide again and ended up at the Welcome House because I could not, being in psychiatric care meant that I could not pay my rent that month. I was living paycheck to paycheck. So I ended up at the Welcome House more recently. And was the beginning of this round of sobriety, is kind of the actual consequences of being homeless and not having a place to stay woke me up to the fact that, okay, I'm living my life in like a suicidal way. Basically, I haven't taken responsibility for my presence on this earth and my role in my family's life and, all these people around me. So I, realized I needed to get a job and find a way to pay my way, or, I don't know, the alternative, to kill yourself, commit to that. But, it's something that I don't think actually 100% into anymore. It wasn't like, I did see some more value in my life and my ongoing existence. So the Welcome House, I moved from there to an Oxford house and into an apartment that I'm currently living in, and have just been slowly chipping away at like really basic kind of self-care, personal care, decorating my apartment, combing my hair, dressing nice at work, and being friendly with coworkers, and real simple stuff that comes with like, being an adult in human interaction. And, it's kind of the skills that I never learned. I also, one thing is I gave up, being an artist, or, that was something I think that like I was, drinking and thinking that this is going to solve my problems. I'm going to be a successful artist, and then I'll be able to get high and drink and blah, 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 whenever I want. And, I was really putting off learning how to take care of myself because I felt like I had to spend all my time doing that. And I was really like a strong workhorse. I like worked on things constantly, but they were never quite fully realized because I was sloppy drunk. I was too stoned to focus, and, all my projects, anything I made was always, didn't have the craftsmanship, that would really be required to become successful anyway. So I think just focusing on just the basics instead of, a career as an artist, just focusing on the basics of how I'm going to live my life as an adult has really changed things for the better. And I've also, really focused on my relationship with my family, because as I was super emotional, as I was a humongous wreck, I think that was not only neglected, but extremely abused. I abused the fact that, they were always trying to help me and always wanted to be there for me. And I, kind of drugged them through hell for it, made their lives a lot harder and provided a lot of stress. So, trying to really value their presence in my life, and that, I have people around me that care about me and that I care about. That's a kind of a starting point for some, I don't know, rebuilding the character of the person I was a long time ago before, the substance abuse and addiction stuff kind of took over. So I don't know. That's kind of a rambling story of what it was like, but that's the basic tenets of it. I don't know. The mental health stuff was really confused by, I really focused on that for a long time before I realized that it was mostly the drinking that caused it. So I think with that, I'll set it aside and see if anybody has any questions or comments. I'll throw it to Simon.
Oh, thanks, Ryan. I'm Simon, and I'm... Oh, yeah. Simon, I'm an alcoholic. Really appreciate your story, coming here and doing the speaker meeting with us. Our stories are quite parallel. I didn't really go to college. I definitely didn't graduate. But man, living in houses with guys and just being able to party, not knowing what is normal. Maybe that is just normal back then, and I never got out of it either. But and I know you've been able to spend a lot more time with your family lately. That has left us with less time with you, though, Ryan. I'm glad I've gotten to see you a few times lately. I don't know. I'll pass the mic around. Probably start with Kana over here and see where it goes.
I'm Kana, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kana.
I thank you for coming and sharing your story. I know you were kind of a little stressed about coming and speaking in front of everyone and everything, but it's very nice that you were able to do that. Yeah, I identify with not knowing what was normal. I mean, I think, when you go through it when you're really young, you kind of think that that's normal. It kind of is normal because a lot of people do that like all the time. It's like, kind of ridiculous. But I mean, you can't really pay attention to what other people do, and you just have to do what's right for yourself. So, but I really appreciate you coming and speaking. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Courtney. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi. And we can ask questions?
Yeah.
So how long have you been sober?
Since November 28th of 2018.
Okay. Congratulations. I was wondering. And then I have another question. Oh.
2017.
Okay.
Yeah, what year is it?
2019. My other question for you, Simon, is when you're asking people to come here and speak, I don't think anybody in the meetings understands what the kind of prerequisite is of being able to come here and speak. So I was just wondering that from you.
There's no prerequisite.
Some sobriety is good. The idea is that people are able to share their story so other people can hear it and feel inspired to,
Yeah, I guess it would be beneficial for everybody if there was some hope in the message. But aside from that, I'm just looking to hear people's stories, to be honest with you. So if you've got something to say, you're welcome to it.
Okay, with that, I'll pass. Greg?
Hey, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it very much. My early college nickname, we had a group with everyone had a nickname, and mine was Keeper of the Key to the wine cellar. So never made it home sober. I don't know how I lived, but I do appreciate the story, and I think like a lot of us who grew up. Well, I grew up a lot earlier than you did, but we certainly did party. And you haven't got touch with yourself as an adult, and you haven't got touch with how do people do it as an adult. So I think it was easy to get locked into that. Maybe I will, maybe I won't make it, and I'd rather be here and by myself in a room and drunk. And so I really was listening and hearing a lot of similarities. And I remember when you first started and you were in Welcome House, and you've done well. I appreciate your being here and being a part of our group. So I'll pass.
Thank you, Greg.
I'm Cass, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Cass.
I don't think I ever realized that your sobriety birthday is the day before mine. That's pretty cool. Yeah, on the 29th. Yeah, one thing in your story that really like caught me is just what you went through emotionally and everything after graduating college. That is something that I really relate to. Like that was my only goal. That's the only goal that I knew that everyone did, is you go to college and you get a degree, and then like for me personally, like after that happened, I didn't have any jobs lined up or anything. I didn't have any responsibilities anymore, and so for me it was kind of an opportunity to just go really downhill and like just drink a lot, you know. And it was just kind of making me think about the fact that I think it would be beneficial to have more support for students that were graduating. I don't know. It's just such a big thing in our society about like people not learning life things, like not learning how to take care of themselves and like be in relationships that are emotionally healthy and do your taxes. Yeah, it's crazy having to learn that stuff particularly after being an alcoholic. It's like, oh my God, I'm like a child again sometimes. I've gotten there, you know, but thank you so much though for sharing your story, and it's good to see you. I've been missing you around. I haven't been to as many meetings lately either. Been busy, which is good, you know, but I also I appreciate the meetings that I do make it to and that you guys are all here. So I'll pass.
Thank you.
My name's Jay, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jerry.
And I really appreciate you sharing your short story with us tonight. One little phrase in it that just kind of resonated with me, I guess, was that you talked about at one point when you were sort of struggling, that you recognized that you, at that point, hadn't fully committed to your sobriety. And I was just thinking of the importance of that and the importance of making that commitment, because it's true that we always have lots of problems and we also have lots of goals. But at some point, the recognition comes that if you don't solve the addiction problem, you haven't got a chance with all the other problems. Yeah. So that has to be such a priority, and you really do have to make such a commitment. And I've been in that exact same place. And there was a long period of time that I was struggling, looking for an easier way to do this thing, and that didn't ever work. You know, I think it takes what it takes to get us to the point we're ready to make that commitment. But glad you're here and doing good. So good luck to you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Betty, and I am an alcoholic. I really appreciate your honesty, and I love to hear people's stories. I always feel like I know them on such a deeper level once I've heard their story. And even though there's a lot of things about ours that are different, I sure do relate to that feeling of absolute despair and hopelessness. And for me, I was trying to lead a double life and seem okay on the outside and successful, and really became a workaholic because I had to look good on the outside, and then drank at home and isolated. And we isolated even from each other, even though we were following a parallel path. I just feel so fortunate that I got here, because I think I could have very easily missed that. And the one thing you mentioned about the allergy, and that was huge for me to hear that, because I could not figure out why, when I tried so hard, that there was no way I could control drinking. And I was a daily drinker, so I failed every day. And that really messes with your self-esteem when you're a failure every single day and you're trying as hard as you can. And I know I have to stay connected and in the middle of AA, or I could easily forget and think I'm a normal person. I have a twin brother who's not alcoholic at all. And he's supportive, but there's no way he could understand because we, our brains work totally differently when it comes to that addiction to alcohol. And I very well could have died of shame. I did not grow up saying, when I grow up, I want to be an alcoholic. And I was so frightened and so ashamed that I knew deep down I was an alcoholic for years before I came into the program, and tried with no success whatsoever. And I'm so grateful to the people that share their experience, and I learned from that, and I really want to stay connected and stay in the center, because I've got a really, it might seem dull, but a peaceful life today. You know, it says we will understand the word serenity and we will know peace, and the promises in the big book. I didn't understand what serenity and peace really was because I had never felt it. I had never experienced it. And today I really am so happy that, you know, there's not many big deals, and everything was a big deal when I was out there drinking. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm an alcoholic. Ryan, thank you for sharing. I know you've worked really hard to put your life back together since you quit, and it is good to see you doing so well. This isn't like a really like deep topic, but it's something I wondered about. Like, I started drinking when I was 18, which is kind of late, like later than maybe a lot of people I've met in AA. Like, I don't know, from like age 13 on up, like I wouldn't have known how to get drugs and alcohol, and no one that I was friends with would have known. So my question is, where were the kids who had it getting it? Because it bothered me then, and it still bothers me. Okay.
Yeah, lots of people had fake IDs also. There was like...
Where do you get a fake ID?
That's a good question. But...
No.
Yeah, one guy did have a brother that looked a lot like him. Yeah. And since he was like on the football team, he was like kind of like built up, muscly, you know. So I think that kind of made him look a little bit older also. I don't know. But yeah, it seems bizarre to me now. Like when I work at a store and I see, you know, you can tell who's a high school kid. They look like children, you know.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine selling alcohol to a high school kid and not questioning it.
Yeah.
I guess. But it happened all the time, I guess. Yeah.
Wow. Not to me.
Did anybody else think of something else that they would like to bring up?
Thanks. I'm glad that you were able to bring up about the coexisting mental health, the major depression, anti-alcohol, because it's so easy to focus on one. I have the same situation. It's so easy to focus on one at the exclusion of the other and not to realize how one feeds the other in many, many ways. So first thing in the morning, I take my happy pill and on we go.
I have a question. Can you expand a little on the allergy? You brought that up. You're like, I have an allergy to alcohol, and I've heard that before, but I don't really understand it. So I don't know if you could let me know about that.
To me, at least, I think it's just the idea that some people are more susceptible to alcoholism, like whether it's genetically, biologically, or psychologically. I don't know exactly why, but I just can't remember a time where I didn't drink compulsively and heavily, I guess. But I don't know. I'm kind of a compulsive, excessive person in general. I do everything excessively. So if it wasn't alcohol, it was something else. But it seems like alcohol definitely, was a problem right from the get-go. So that's all I meant by it. But I don't know if anybody has any.
Yeah, that is a pretty common way to define alcoholism. Does anybody have a more?
They have a saying that's like I was just gonna say they have a saying that goes something like the allergy of the body, the obsession of the mind. I don't really know what that's a reference to, though. Maybe you have lots of experience in this group. Maybe you can tell us what that means.
Oh, thanks, Kana. I don't know. What? Just like a reaction that? Yeah, physical reaction. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't know. I've had it explained to me that it's whenever I take that first drink, it sets up the craving, and I want more. And as they say, one's too many and 1,000 isn't enough. It's just that obsession of the mind. And for me, I can actually, before I even would take a drink, just going to the liquor store, knowing I was going to have some, I would start to feel that sense of relief. So it centers in my mind, and it's very dangerous for me. I'm real careful about anything that I take, or I always worry about medical problems, and I have to be really, really cautious that I'm not setting myself up for a relapse or succumbing to that, because I just do not respond the way a lot of other people do. So it's just that, and just that I was either always drinking or thinking about drinking or thinking about how I was going to get something to drink. It was just that vicious cycle that went on inside my head. Oh, gosh, I wasted a lot of energy, doing that. Thanks.
I don't know the dictionary definition of an allergy, but I think it's an adverse reaction to something that's normally benign to others.
They also refer to it as a disease.
Yeah, and the disease model, I think, has been helpful within the medical community, getting patients better treatment as well. And then on top of that, I think it's also just sometimes an easier way of telling people that you can't drink. Sorry, I'm allergic to alcohol. I had heard that before I ever admitted I was an alcoholic from other people. Yeah, Carmen always says she breaks out in handcuffs. Yeah. Good question. I'm about to wrap it up. All right, good job.
All right.